welcome back. This is Lab 7, Remote Access RDP for Lesson 1. As you can see, I'm already logged into everything, have my topology open and my PDF for the lab open, and let's begin. So Lesson 1, connect to another machine using RDP. Using Remote Desktop Protocol, RDP allows the user to connect and assume control of the GUI on a remote Windows-based PC. By default, Remote Desktop uses TCP port 3389. In the following steps, we will use the default RD client on Windows 2K8R2 Internal 1 to connect to and remotely control the Windows 2K8R2 Internal 2 machine in the lab topology diagram. Remote Desktop Services was previously known as Terminal Services and is a Windows component that allows a server to host multiple simultaneous client sessions. RD uses this technology to sessions to run remotely. Did you know the default port that Remote Desktop listens on, 3389, can be changed through the Windows registry? Using a non-standard port for common protocols could be helpful in mitigating security threats. Step 1. Click on the Windows 2K8R2 Internal 1 icon in the topology diagram. Use the instructions in the Lab Settings section to log into Windows 2K8R2 Internal 1. So if I go over here, I'm going to find my Windows 2K8R2 Internal 1 and click on that. That should then open up the tab in my Windows. And since I was already logged in, it's already started up. But if for whatever reason it didn't stay logged in, you can use this drop down on the tab to go ahead and select the Send, Control, Alt, and Delete option. That will then open up the login window for your profile. Step 2, if the initial configuration task and/or server manager window appears, close them by clicking the X in the top right corner of the window. Click the Start button in the bottom left corner and type Remote in the search bar. Then click Remote Desktop Connection to open the RD client. So if we go down here to the Start, which is on the bottom left-hand corner, select that and type Remote in the search bar. We're going to see Remote Desktop Connection right at the top of the list, and we're going to select it to open it. Step 4, type the IP address of the Windows 2K/R2 Internal 2 remote machine 192.168.12.11 into the text box and click Connect. It looks like it's already typed in there, but let's go ahead and double check it's all there. Again, that is 192.168.12.11. Looks about right. We're going to go ahead and select the Connect button. Then it says you should see a screen like the one below indicating that Remote Desktop Connection is attempting to establish a remote connection. After a brief wait, the connection will fail and the following screen will display. This is an error message. It says, listed on the page are 3 reasons why the RD connection may fail. Number 1, remote access to the server is not enabled. Or number 2, the remote computer is turned off. Or number 3, the remote computer is not available on the network. Click OK to close the warning message. So yeah, in most cases, warning messages will come like this with a red X or some kind of red icon indicating it is an error. I do suggest that you look through these thoroughly to make sure you understand what the error message is and try to comprehend what it's trying to tell you. We're going to go ahead and click OK as instructed and move on to the next step. So on page 9, it begins with, we will determine why the system is not able to connect to the remote machine and remedy the problem. When troubleshooting connectivity issues, it is always good to begin with a ping command issued at the command prompt. So our first step is to figure out why this is not working. And it says, open a command prompt window, start to command prompt, and ping the remote computer by issuing the following command. So we're hitting the start button, and as you can see, the command prompt is listed up here on the top. If you don't see it here in the search bar, you can either search for the full name command prompt or search for CMD. I'm going to go ahead and click on the command prompt button to open that up. Now it's letting us know that we need to ping that address. So over here in the command prompt, we're going to type in the command ping space 192.168.12.11 and then hit enter. The ping of the 192.168.12.11 being successful will eliminate reason 2, the remote computer is turned off, and reason 3, the remote computer is not available on the network. Through the process of elimination, the problem has narrowed to one reason: remote access to the server is not enabled. Check to see if remote access is enabled on the Windows 2K8 R2 internal 2 machine. So as you can see, the ping went through, we got no errors. And so we're going to see what the next troubleshooting technique is. Using the login credentials and process provided earlier in the lab settings sections, log into the Windows 2K8 R2 internal 2 machine. I already did that earlier, so I'm just going to click on the W2K8 R2 internal 2 tab. And there it is, popped right open. If the initial configurations task and/or server manager windows appears, close them by clicking the X in the top right corner of the window. So let's do that. Get that out of the way. To determine the remote access is enabled, click Start and right-click on the computer and select Properties. So we're going to look at the computer properties by selecting Start here on the bottom left-hand corner. Going up to the right-hand side menu, you'll see the option for Computer, as I highlight it here. Right-click, that will give you a drop-down of menu options, and right at the bottom you'll see the option for Properties, and click that. This will then open up the system screen for the computer information. Continuing on to step 10, in the system window, click Remote Settings. Now that option is right over here to the left-hand menu. Underneath Device Manager, you'll see an option for Remote Settings. We're going to click that. The System Properties window should appear, which it did. Select the Remote tab at the top of the dialog window to access the settings for the remote desktop. So as you can see, it's already open right away, but there are some other tabs here, Computer Name, Hardware, Advanced. So if you don't see this one right away, you may have to click it to open it. You should see that the Don't Allow Connections to this computer option is selected in the Remote Desktop section of the Remote tab. For security purposes, this is the default option. In order to enable remote connectivity to this computer, you need to change the option. There are two other options for enabling remote desktop. Select the middle option, Allow Connections from Computers Running Any Version of Remote Desktop Less Secure. The last option, which incorporates network level authentication, is beyond the scope of this lab. However, you can read more on this setting at the following URL, which I do suggest you do maybe after you're done with this lab. So right now it just wants us to select Allow Connections from Computer Running Any Version of Remote Desktop Less Secure. As you can see, we got a pop-up, which probably leads us to step 12, which says select Allow Connections from Computers Running Any Version of Remote Desktop Less Secure. The following window will appear to notify you of the exception being created in the firewall. Click OK, and then click OK again to close the System Properties dialog. I'm actually going to click Apply just to make sure. You'll notice another pop-up came out. I'm sure we'll get there. There are other reasons that remote desktop connectivity may fail, which we got a prompt that it did fail, but they are beyond the scope of this lab. Step 13, there will be a pop-up warning if the Windows Firewall service is not running on the system. Windows Firewall helps control which programs or ports can be used to communicate between the Windows Server 2008 R2 server and other computers on the network. To allow a program or port to communicate through Windows Firewall, an exception needs to be enabled on this, and this can only be done if the service is enabled. Carefully read the warning and then click OK again to close the warning window. So the warning window says, the Windows Firewall service is not running. Windows cannot automatically enable or disable remote desktop because the Windows Firewall service is not running. To fix this problem, open Control Panel, click Administrative Tools, click Services, double-click Windows Firewall, and then click Start. Then on the Remote tab in System Properties, enable or disable Remote Desktop. So step 14 says to enable Windows Firewall, click on Control Panel. So we're going to go ahead and close this, hit OK. And here on the System menu, we actually have an option for Control Panel that we can go straight to. Over here on the left-hand corner, there's a Control Panel Home, and we click on that. It says to go to Control Panel Home, link in the upper left side of the page. Click on the System and Security link, and then click Windows Firewall. So we're going to go here to System and Security, and then we're going to click on Windows Firewall. Step 15 says in the left panel, click Turn Windows Firewall on or off, then click Use Recommended Settings. Step 16 now brings us to a new window, Customizing Settings, and it says under the Home or Work Private Work Network Location Settings heading, click the radio button next to Turn on Windows Firewall, then click OK, which it's already clicked on under the Home or Work Private and Network, we can see, then click OK. Then it says repeat steps 9 through 12 to enable remote desktop connections. So we're going to go back to step 9. We're going to go through this a little more quickly than before because we've already been through this. So step 9 says to determine if remote access is enabled, and click Start, and then click on Computer and select Properties. So we're actually going to go straight to Computer. Go to Start button to Computer, right click, click on Properties. And then we're going to select the remote settings on the left-hand menu of the System window. Go to Remote tab, and then we're going to select the Allow Connections from Computers Running Any Version of Remote Desktop Unless Secure. And this, we should be now on step 11. It says Remote Desktop Firewall Exception will be enabled. You choose to enable remote desktop connection for all network connections on this computer. To enable it for selected network connections, open Windows Firewall with Advanced Security. And we're going to hit OK. Then it says now that the remote connections have been enabled on the remote machine, we should now be able to initiate an RDP session. So I'm going to go ahead and click Apply. And as you can see, we didn't get an error message this time. We're going to say OK. We're going to continue on with this lab in the next video.